In this episode, we're going to be using ChatGPT to analyze our AWS costs simply by uploading a cost and usage report. I'm not really sure what to expect, so let's give it a try and see if ChatGPT can save us some money. So what I have here is ChatGPT 4.0, and I like to start off by asking ChatGPT to write my prompt for me, which is what I'll do right now. So I'm just starting with a basic prompt and asking ChatGPT to generate a more in-depth prompt, which it has done here. This is probably too much for what I want to do here, and so I'm just going to take the first portion of this objective. So I'm just going to copy this first sentence, which is all that I think I'm going to need. And with that copied, I'm going to switch over to the data analyst tool, and I am going to upload my cost and usage report. So I'm uploading a cost and usage report that I have prepared from a relatively small service that is hosting a REST API. Now, I know this service could benefit from VPC endpoints or VPC interfaces to AWS services. So if ChatGPT can find that for us, then I'm willing to call this experiment a success. And here I'm just customizing the prompt slightly. And then once submitted, ChatGPT starts generating the response, which I've sped up here a little bit for this video. So starting over, we can see that ChatGPT parsed the data, and it's even showing its work by outputting the Panda scripts that it used to load the data, which you can see here. I noticed a few errors from the Panda scripts, but it didn't seem to prevent ChatGPT from parsing the data. And then after the initial loading of the data, there's just some generic information here, followed by another section of code where it is finding the totals per AWS service. I see errors from the script, but these totals look correct, and it was able to correctly identify the 5 most expensive AWS services in this account. Now, finding the most expensive services is something you can easily do with a spreadsheet, but let's look at the next section, which is the cost optimization strategies. So the cost optimization strategy section looks like ChatGPT has just taken the top 5 AWS services by costs and is suggesting two generic strategies for each. It's unclear, or it does not appear that it is using any data from the CUR report, and it is just offering some standard suggestions. So the response ends with a prompt to analyze a particular service more deeply. So let me see if I can get it to take a closer look at the VPC service. So it's taking a similar approach to analyze just the VPC cost this time, and it is using data from the CUR report to identify the top usage types and the totals for each usage type, which do appear correct in this case. Again, I noticed a couple of errors, but it didn't seem to affect the results. When we get down to the action plan, we can see that ChatGPT is offering some suggestions to reduce our costs. It's unclear if these are generic suggestions just based on the VPC usage type or specific to the CUR report that we uploaded. but I can see that suggestion 3.1 does reference using VPC endpoints for S3 and DynamoDB to reduce transfer costs, which is something that I know needs to be applied to this account. So I want to see if ChatGPT can estimate my cost savings if I were to implement a VPC endpoint or gateway for S3. So I forgot and didn't realize that this account doesn't really make use of S3 very much at all, and so our costs are actually zero. So I can see that ChatGPT did do the calculation and does correctly report that the transfer costs are zero, and so setting up a VPC endpoint is not going to save us any money, which is a fair analysis. At least we know now that we don't need to invest in setting up VPC endpoints. Since VPC endpoints aren't going to result in any cost savings, let's go back to the NAT gateway to see if we can identify any opportunities there. So when we get down to the cost reduction strategies for the NAT gateway, ChatGPT is recommending some best practices here for managing your NAT gateway costs. ChatGPT even volunteers to provide you an estimate of savings if you were to adopt a NAT instance instead of a NAT gateway, including the code it used to generate the estimate and the estimated savings here at the bottom. So that completes our little experiment into using ChatGPT to understand our AWS costs. Initial impressions are ChatGPT does seem easier to use than spreadsheets or reading detailed documentation. And for those reasons, I would recommend it to beginners or anyone new to managing their cloud infrastructure costs. However, I suspect that experienced engineers are likely to stick with their existing analysis tooling because I didn't see anything in ChatGPT beyond the 1 or 2 layers of depth that would convince experienced engineers to change their processes. So that completes this episode. If you have additional questions about your cloud spending that you'd like us to try and answer, please subscribe and leave your questions in the comments below, and we'll try to cover them in a future episode. Otherwise, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.